Welcome back. Welcome back to the Psychic Soul Healer channel. Today I'm going to do a Shadow Oracle vlog. I figured I would do a video on trauma bonds, what they are and why they happen. Because a lot of times people are coming on to listen to the readings because they want to know why things are playing out the way that they are within their connection, why they attract certain people and situations into their life. If we are able to imagine the life that we want to create, then why aren't we creating the life that we want to create? And really, trauma bonds leads us into a lot of shadow healing. Now, I've spent a lot of time reflecting on trauma bonds, the pull towards people who, in many ways, just aren't good for us. It's a magnetic tension built from attachment, longing, and old wounds. Now, today we're going to do an oracle card reading that meets you where you're at. Energetic in spirit, but grounded in clarity and practical steps. This reading is for your awareness, your empowerment, a real world action, not a substitute for you doing the shadow healing work yourself. Now, if you feel triggered at any point, pause, breathe, and return when you're ready. Healing is a process, and you don't have to move faster than your body wants to go. Trauma bonds are powerful emotional grips. We form with people who just aren't good for us. They aren't just chemistry or bad luck. They're complex patterns shaped by early attachments, fear, and repetitive cycles of highs and lows. When someone mirrors our safety needs back to us, even inconsistently, the brain starts to mistake chaos for closeness. Over time, we become attached to the idea of safety. We mistaken for real safety, even when the relationship hurts us. So, what is a trauma bond really? It's dependent attachment that reinforces by intermittent reinforcement. Now, intermittent manipulation is when a person comes in and out of your life, and that actually causes brain damage because it swells the amygdala. And that's the gland inside of your head that's job is to sense out outside stimuli that corresponds with any trauma that we have ever experienced. So these trauma bonds, like they change the not just who we are, but actually change our whole physical constitution. That's why a lot of times these relationships manifest a lot of sickness and imbalances psychologically and emotional. The unpredictable mix of care and harm. That's really what it is. Intermittent manipulation. You want to read the signs. You justify the other person's harmful behavior. You downplay. You stay because the longing for things to improve feels stronger than the current pain. You defend the dynamic in the name of that it's almost there. The cycle is exhausting because, again, it's very emotional, it's very psychological. It makes us not be present because we're always worrying. It puts our body in a safe in a place of survival. So again, the cycle is just really exhausting and it becomes really learnable. Now, with awareness and boundaries and practical steps, you can interrupt the pattern and start choosing your safety, which is really what you want to do. You don't want to choose familiar hurts that you associate with love because that's really what it is. And this is very important if you grew up in a family dynamic that was imbalanced. Now, let's talk about what helps before we jump into the oracle spread. Grounding. in psychological terms, a clear map of what you're dealing with and concrete actions that you can take today. You don't need to hate yourself for the pattern that you're in. You do need information, support, and a plan to move forward towards healthier connections, however, starting with your own limits and worth. We want to focus on that. We don't want to focus that we're limited, that we're not enough, we're not good enough. This would manifest as self-sabotaging behaviorisms when we don't know our own worth. And it comes out as giving too much time, energy to people that really don't know our worth. And if you try to convince a person of your worth, well, again, then that downgrades your worth even more in this type of trauma bond dynamic, because it's not that you can love a person to heal them or love a person for them to know your worth. Now, for this session, I'm using my deck, which is the Psychic Soul Healer Oracle system. This system is made for healing the shadow aspects of ourselves. There are 68 cards in the deck titled under Transpersonal Psychology. And I also like to I like to pull from a bunch of different cards. I also wanted to suggest some things that you can do after the reading so that you can help heal your trauma bond connections. If you are finding that you're in a trauma bond, now you know that you're in a trauma bond connection where over time, you don't expect anything, that you're not happy, the person doesn't emotionally fulfill you, they don't show up for you. If anything, they put you in a space of hypervigilance. And again, that goes back to that amygdala gland. When you are connected to someone that continually tells you that they're not going to show up for you, and they do that through just emotionally not not showing up for you. That means any birthday, any holiday, any special occasion, any traumatic experience. Emotionally, they cannot do it. And so that's why understanding that it's your emotions that are the gateway to spiritual healing. So people that are not emotionally intelligent, they don't really do that much healing when it comes to shadow healing, where if you're someone that has, then you're obviously not going to be on the same level. So shadow healing isn't about getting the person to do what you want them to do. However, if there is this bond of unconditional love, they will change. Understand people don't change because they're stuck in a perception of who they are and what they believe is possible for them. And so we all form habits and behaviorism subconsciously as a way to protect ourselves. And the reptilian mind overrides that creative mind because we have free will. God gave us free will. So our reptilian mind is all about survival. And it's again going to override the creative mind. The creative mind is the intuitive mind. And when we're in that mind, we're in a place that's open for receiving. When we are in a place of survival, that reptilian mind, well, then guess what? We're not going to be able to create anything that we want that's in relation to abundance, and unless it's an abundant of problems, because our energy is in survival, and that energy we're only supposed to be in temporarily. We're never supposed to live in that energy. See, right now we're living in times that people are more in their survival mind because the world tells them that they don't make enough money, they don't have enough. So when you live the perception that life is hard because again there is a lack of money, or you're not happy with your job, or you're in a bad relationship, or whatever the issue is, well, until you learn the spiritual lesson and then integrate the spiritual lesson. And so learning the spiritual lesson is actually seeing how you contribute to the imbalances. So when we're looking in your situation with your trauma bond, which is, let's just look at the present dynamic and patterns that you're hiding, or that this person is hiding. So the present dynamic and patterns that are playing out within your connection. So we're going to pull from a few different decks. Shame. Now, shame creates self-sabotaging behaviorism because person doesn't believe that they're deserving of actually having love. And so person that has that energy does things that bring shame to them. So they could be someone that's a cheater. There's someone that well, we'll actually see what they are, not to get caught up in the story, which people can tend to get caught up in the story of what a person does, and that doesn't heal them. It just gets them stuck in a ruminating cycle of what the person did. But if you're integrating it, you have to. So what they did is that there was no trust in the connection. There was no trust. Again, we just see a lot of dishonesty, a lot of dishonesty, a lot of trust, a lot of where what happened is that this person has a lot of unresolved trauma, and so do you. So the thing is that this person's not being transparent, not you're not being able to trust them, puts you in a place of hypervigilance where you feel like again that you have to be alone, like in hermit mode, again, isolation. So this person really just was unfair. And they were unfair because emotionally they didn't give to you. They wanted to stay connected to you, but they didn't want to give to you. They wanted to keep you as an option to stay in the worst in the worst kind of terms, and just to dominate the connection, and to like kind of have control over you, which is actually what domination means. So like a one-sided connection. I'm looking for a deck, and I can't stand it when I can't find my stuff. Like that's one deck that wasn't the deck that I was looking for. I want to just see. Want to just see. So let's see. This person again has love blocks. It keeps saying the same thing. Like, and because they have love blocks, it clouds their vision, where they get in their own way. Everything is seen through the lens of shame. So they don't really believe that they're deserving of it. And when a person believes that they're not deserving of it, they do things that are sabotaging. And part of it is not being transparent, leaving you like in a fog, that fear of obligation of, this person like having to follow through and not being able to follow through, like it within a committed relationship, right? When a person that has like a committed relationship, that's what they have to do. But the relationship is turbulent because they're an avoidant. They don't really they don't want to talk about the issues. It's like out of fear that you're going to reject them. So what happens is that they just kind of leave it hanging, because what happens is that they never fix it. They never fix it. It's almost like, storms of love. You guys fight to make up, fight to make up. So the way that you learn how to communicate with each other is all about control. It's all about dominance. It's all about one up you. And this is what makes a trauma bond what it is. It's like you're 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 both want control after a while, because what happens is one person's in control usually and the other person usually is not. One person emotionally isn't getting everything but is expecting to hold up the entire connection, but they're selling it in return for financial stability, or for, like, again, just so that they're in a connection, for more of what it looks like and not really what it is. Trauma bonds, people stay together for their money, for again seeming to be good, or for the children, but never for what a relationship is supposed to be, which is connection, unconditional love. Again, when we are in that energy, we're vibing at the highest state of consciousness. That means we're whole. And we're realizing that because there's no separation from us and our creator. But the perception that there is separation is when we get stuck in relationships that don't give enough, that there's a lot of drama, there's a lot of trauma, and that's this person. So where they waste a lot of time, they waste a lot of time in the connection because they want to control the dynamic. It's, again, it goes back to them wanting to control and dominate. And so again, it's this person's inadequacy. They want you, but they want it on their terms. So if they're going to be transparent to you, and then you're going to really see who they are and their fear of, then you're not going to stay. So again, it's like they would just rather have everything on their terms. But the thing is, their terms is very surface, because as soon as it's not surface, it becomes turbulent, because there's all these problems that you're not allowed to talk about. It's like a relationship that's on and off, on and off, on and off. So even when it's off, both parties kind of know that they're going to get back together again, because this is just the way that they've learned to communicate. They've learned to hurt each other. They've learned to, try to get a reaction. The controlling is, again, I want to dominate you, but I need something from you. The codependency is that. So again, which really just, like, this person's acting like right now they're in a place of disempowerment because you're not playing along. The moment that you don't play along within a trauma bond connection is the moment that this person, like, they don't have any power. Their way is to put you in a place of disempowerment. But it's more about controlling and dominance, which, no one can really keep you stuck. Only you can. See, that's the thing. With the trauma bond connection, both parties want to stay connected to that person, to the other person, but it becomes a very toxic type of connection. One that's more like a competition. Like, I'm going to one up you. I'm going to one up you. One that is bound to pain and suffering due to the fact of us going back to the original wound, which is like fragmented pieces of themselves, of not knowing who they are. Like one person not emotionally not being able to give to themselves and having somebody else do everything. Like they're almost like reliving their childhood drama where, hey, the one person is spoiled and gets pampered and everything goes their way, and the other person is subservient to that. But the person that's bound to the person that's doing everything for them, is mothering them and babying them, really is like there's no passion anymore. There's no relationship anymore. What it becomes is more like you're that person's mother, you're that person's father, you're that person's, like, You're everything except for the role that you want to play. And that is again what keeps you stuck in a place of disempowerment. And so again, one person has to have money issues. Or it doesn't mean that this person doesn't have money issues, but they usually use money as a weapon. And they grew up with money issues, which again, they're taught that, well, they wind up loving their money more than they love the relationship. And so, the trauma bond, we stay in those connections again for other things more than what it is. But also understand when a person is not strong within themselves, they usually put money as something like is their identity, and money is not your identity. This person, like again, doesn't want to deal with criticism. So you want to know where they are right now. Part of them is holding back, part of them is financially not doing well. They're not coming towards you because of, again, criticism, and they don't want to be put in a place of disempowerment. And it's not so much that they are put in a place of disempowerment, but by you standing your ground and wanting equal give and take reciprocity, is again that this person feels like then that's beneath them, you know? So when you're in a connection like this, it's like it means that you fell in love with who you thought that they were and who you wanted them to be. You saw their worth more than more than you honored your own. And so that's really the spiritual lesson. It's very simple. Um, and really, when we can see what is the underlying emotion or belief, well, again, for this person, they don't really believe that they're deserving of it. When we look at your energy and we say, well, what's driving you? What's that emotional energy? What are the spiritual blockages for you? Because in order to be in a trauma bond connection, it means that you have fragmented pieces of yourself and that you need healing. Because no one volunteers to be in a trauma bond relationship. It means it's like you're being told that love is pain every day. It's like it's held together over time with hate. There's a fine line between love and hate. Well, a trauma bond actually depicts that. And there's a lot of intermittent manipulation, a lot of competition, a lot of, so you have to say, what's the underlying emotion that you have? Again, that's the energetic template. You're a magnet of who and what comes into your life. Who are you attracting into your life? Who? And that is, again, isolation, misunderstood, abuse. Well, psychological abuse. When you have a person that's just committed to misunderstanding you. But when we look at your inner child wounds, you again grew up in an environment where there was some sort of abuse. And also watching your parents possibly abuse themselves. So it was either you watching your parents abuse each other, be in a trauma bond connection, or you yourself was like continually emotionally and psychologically abused. And I say that because misunderstand, love is pain. Only love is not pain. Misunderstood is also no one gets me. No one, like what I'm asking for, it seems like it's too much, or what I want is too much, or people don't, again, see me. People see you through the perceptions that they have. So when you're dealing with fragmented people, they're not going to see you for who they are, for who you are, rather. They're going to see you for more of who they are. And that's because, again, fragmented. So you might have just grown up in an environment where your parent was abused and then they treated you with the same type of behavior and they weren't happy in their life. They had a trauma bond. And so growing up in that environment and watching people that you love suffer like that, well, we inherit that trauma. And so it's the abuse. And if you're in abuse and to the point where you have to isolate, well, then emotionally, obviously, you're not getting what you need, but also you're not grounded. Isolation, and like, you're going to want to be in a place where you're protecting yourself. So, again, that puts you in the energy of fear. So, Spirit says that is the energetic template that needs to be changed. So, the path forward, let's look and just say what would be some practical steps to move forward. See if I can find the cards. That would be great. Let's see what they would be, what you would need to do. And that would be, first and foremost, create a sacred space. A lot of times we come from a place of anxiety or we're trying to like come from a place of intuition, but we have a hard time differentiate between our intuition and anxiety. So Spirit says, that takes training the body and mind. If we have a lot of anxiety, it's definitely going to be hard. So when we create a sacred space where we take time to spend with ourselves, we really know what we want, and it's all about intention. But then we can also learn to be guided more, when we're interactive in our life, because essentially that's what spirit wants you to do. You're in the world. You're not supposed to be a part of the world, but you're supposed to be in the world through contributing to how you want to contribute by being the expression of love, by doing what you love, by giving and receiving of love. So, that's the whole reason of why you're here, to learn that there's no separation from you and love, and you find that through your path and through, not isolating, but actually through connection, because that's what's going to open up your heart. When we're in a place of survival, there's a sense that we don't trust. And we're in a place of fear and we think, I can't change that fear. I can't change it because it's just a habit. You were conditioned to not trust, to be in a place of survival. So when you're on your path, your heart is open because you're doing what you love. You're in the passion for life. Your vibration is high. You're going to attract people to you that are going to help emotionally fulfill you, but you're emotionally fulfilled. So someone comes into your life that's a trauma bond, that's giving so little on an emotional level, well, you're not going to entertain it. But because you weren't doing that, you gave too much. You couldn't tell. It was like you were in a desert. People that are in a desert emotionally are what wind up attracting trauma bonds, because they don't realize that it's a trauma bond connection. So you had to go through this situation to face your fears. Why? Because sometimes the trauma that we witnessed growing up has that much of an impact. It wasn't our trauma, but we could have watched our parent, someone that we love, suffer. And because of that, it made such an impact on us that energetically we took it on. So the Spirit's saying you had to go through this to actually integrate. And we're going to pull one more card, which is now it's time to live authentically, boldly, unafraid to be yourself, live out loud, because Spirit says it's time for you to attract someone more in alignment with who you are today, not the wounds of your past. When you again go into a trauma bond connection, that's essentially what you're doing. You're attracting somebody that resonates with the wounds of your past, not really who you are today. You just haven't created enough of who you are today by finding yourself. And that's why Spirit said it's all about you now living boldly, unafraid to be yourself so that you can really, you know, attract the situations and experiences that you want, and that you're teaching people how you want to be treated by how you're treating yourself. And that's will teach people that really don't have that much to offer to not really even come your way because they already know that you're already sustaining yourself. See, people that are, wind up in trauma bond connections a lot of times are people that wind up with narcissists. And the narcissist sees your worth, always sees the person's worth. It's that the people don't see their own worth. And that's what Spirit's saying. When you live authentically and boldly well, you're going to attract exactly who's supposed to be in your life and what's supposed to come into your life, not make something that hurts half the time or most of the time, trying to make something work because that's what it feels like when you're in a trauma bond, trying to make something work that doesn't really want to work, that's committed not to. But so you don't abandon yourself. Instead, also like to share like a few journal prompts at this time as we come to a close within this reading, because if you found yourself connected to a trauma bond, you want to integrate these insights at your own pace. You know, we always want to, before you dive into doing any type of journaling, you want to ground yourself, you want to plant your feet on the ground, you want to feel your breath, and you want to set an intention for what you wanted to really release at this time, and you want to energetically, like I said, tap into your feelings, and because your feelings are the gateway again to your spiritual healing. And so we do a reframing exercise, and that reframing exercise is all about you, you know, um, it's all about you seeing what was fragmented. What was fragmented here was I was neglected. I felt like I wasn't enough. It brought up feelings of, a little bit of even suppression, because anytime that you would have criticism for this person, they would again be an avoidant. They never wanted to work through anything. They didn't really believe in the relationship. So, because they didn't believe in themselves. So, it's about journaling about the perception. Did that mean that you're not enough? Well, this person made me feel that I wasn't enough. That's could be like one perception of being with a person like this. So now write down what your new perception is, because the perception wasn't based on truth. It was based on, again, your pain, what you've experienced in the past, and the way that this person was acting, but you didn't know what was going on inside this person's head. It's like this person doesn't, again, they don't really believe in love. They need to do their healing. And when they do their healing, they'll be able to be in a relationship. But until then, no. And anyone that's going to be in a relationship with them it's going to be shame, because that's what they're going to make you feel, because they're not going to be authentic. They're not going to be transparent. It's all about control. It's all about dominance when you're in a trauma bond. So if you have enough of self, and enough of self is loving yourself, having a passion in your life, being interactive in your life. Well, guess what? That person can't do anything. It's like, because, and what you'll see is whatever they're giving is counterfeit. It's not on the same vibration. See, you being able to sustain yourself by being the energy of love, by doing what you love and connecting to people who, eventually you grow an emotional connection to, that's like will help you go with the flow of life, which again is relevant to that second chakra, being strong within yourself, where you're attracting a person that can sustain themselves. They're looking for you to be the supply. That's what a trauma bond is. It's that that's why one person usually is not enough with these people, because they look for supply, because they don't sustain themselves. Where you know, you'd say, I just wanted to be loved. The spirit says, well, if you don't love yourself enough, that's what you are going to attract. And if you grew up with that in that environment, and that's a trauma, that you inherited, then you're definitely going to attract that. So again, you can heal it through becoming yourself. And we end off with one more, which just Spirit saying is you're a manifestation of light, which is love, which it means that there's no separation between you and your creator, that you need to learn to see the beauty in yourself, to grow and develop your inner self in harmony with light and beauty, to free yourself from negativity, that your heart transforms so that your intellect shines and your inner beauty and light grows. And because Spirit says that you already are a manifestation of light. However, sometimes we don't see that. And if we're connected to a person like that, we'll forget that because trauma bonds, like I said, they keep you bound to your childhood wounds, to the pain, to the suffering, where really Spirit says once you healed, and you again are changing the dynamic of what you bring towards you too when you integrate the spiritual lesson and become yourself. And that again is to become the manifestation of the light that you are. And that's by getting to a place of unconditional love, by doing what you love and finding yourself. And really, we forget that as we get older. We get caught up in our families, we get caught up in, our relationships, in our jobs, but we forget about, nurturing ourselves in that way. And we really need to, because life is always changing, and it's a way that we can really go with the flow of life and not give anybody power over us, because emotionally we're good within ourselves. All right, I'm going to leave that there. You let me know how you resonated, and if you have a topic that you want me to pull some oracle cards on, please let me know. And until next time, be true to you. Bye bye.